There's another topic that I wanted to discuss today. Um, I've actually been wanting to talk about it for a long time now, but just never got around to bringing it up because it's such a long, drawn-out thing, like story for me. So I thought, hey, I'm sitting in here. It's nice and warm. I don't want to get out yet, so I'll tell the story now. Back in 1992, 1994, somewhere in there, I started to have weird reactions to being around my daughter at the same age as when I was sexually abused as a child by our neighbor. And what I mean by it's just little things about her brought back memories of mine when I was that age. Like, yeah, I don't want to say I have weird feelings around her, but it brought back involuntary memories of being that young and being abused. So I went so long, like probably about 6 months, trying to deal with that on my own. But yeah, my husband and I decided that, yeah, I should probably seek some sort of counseling. But there wasn't any counseling available in our, like, not one-on-one counseling in our area, because we're such a small little village. That's where we lived at that time. But what they did have was a survivors group, I guess you can call it. Yeah, like we'd meet once a week. And I was there for probably 2 years. I was a part of this group, like this healing group. And one thing that I learned from that group that pertains to this pathway, I guess, is how to meditate. I had never really knew much about it before then. And, you know, like, we didn't have the internet or anything like that. We had cable TV, but that still didn't show. It didn't help you learn much of any other types of cultures, things like that. But they did teach us how to meditate, and I was really good at it. I loved it. Like, I would do it 3 times a day whenever I had the chance to. And what ended up happening was, looking back now, I didn't realize it at that time, but looking back now and having studied a little bit more about what happens when you meditate, I opened up some channel, and I'm supposing is what it was, like a channel. And I started to have very vivid premonitions and dreams. I started to have, what would you call it? Like, I always called it an illness. Like, I felt nauseous all the time whenever certain events would happen, or whenever I was around someone who had something negative that was going to happen to them, or usually it ended up with like a relative dying or something, I would feel physically ill. And it usually didn't last for very long, like a couple days to a week. And then usually that person would pass away. And, you know, it wasn't personal. Like, it was all things about people that I wasn't connected to. You know, like, I'm all over the place with this story. Hang on. Okay, the one story in particular that really pushed me into believing that something was happening was that I had this dream that this man that a coworker knew, like, she was friends with his wife, that he was going to pass away, and there was going to be this huge funeral in the next town over, like, the next town was probably about 8 miles from where we were at, where we were working. And, like, I didn't feel sad in the dream. It was just, all I remembered was that the entire store shut down. Like, I worked in the office with this other lady. All I remember is that the store ended up shutting down so that everyone could go to this man's funeral. But, you know, like, to me, it wasn't a big deal because this man wasn't anything special, you know. But it was funny because I went in to work the next morning and I told my coworker, Mariette, about it. And she just kind of laughed it off because she thought, like I did, that this man wasn't really special. It's not like they're going to close a whole city or a whole town down for his funeral kind of thing. But anyway, I guess probably about 2 or 3 weeks later, I came into work and she was just white. She kind of looked at me. I punched in my time card and I turned around and said good morning to her, and then she just looked at me and she said, "If you ever dream about me or my family, I don't want to know." And of course, I'm just standing there because at this time I'd forgotten about this dream. Like, it was just something silly. And I just kind of looked at her like, "What are you talking about? This is insane. What do you mean?" And then she goes, "Sit down." So I sat down, and then she went on to tell me that the night before, the father of this man in my dream passed away unexpectedly. And I just kind of looked at her and went, "Oh, that's weird." And she said, No. The weird thing is, he was a huge pioneer in this town and this area. So all of the stores in this village are going to be shut down for his funeral. I kind of said to her, I said, "Okay, that's a little bit stranger." And then she shook her head. She goes, No, even weirder yet. She goes, "He had a falling out like 20 years ago with the priest here. So he can't have his funeral in this town." And that's when I was like, I goosebumps. I went, "What do you mean?" And she said, "We have to have it in Flair. We're having the funeral in Flair." And I just sat there and I was like, whoa, okay, that's a little weird. It was amazing. And so, yeah, like that, and it was like that week, later on that week, they had his funeral, and we did shut down the town so that everybody can go. Oh, that was another thing, too. In my dream, it was huge, and we had to be in the parking lot, which was really strange because, like I said before, this man really wasn't anything special, right? But his father was. And it was funny because I guess at the funeral, I didn't actually go because I didn't know them that well. But the service was so huge that they had overhead speakers, like, what do you call those? Like overhead speakers, I guess, outside in the parking lot. Because there was like 350 people there. And we're just small town churches, so it was just really weird. So, of course, when that happened, she was joking around and told me that I was psychic. And I said, "Yeah, right, whatever, not a big deal. It's just a stupid dream." And anyway, word got around about this dream because Marriott liked to talk. So, yeah, she was telling everybody about it after the funeral was done. And I remember going over to my friend's house. And my friend worked at the store with us. Like, she was a cashier. I was the AR person. I did accounts receivable in the office. And I can't remember. I think I just went over to visit for coffee one day. And Maureen just looks at me. She goes, point blank. She goes, "Am I going to have a girl?" Like, at that time, she had 2 boys, and she was ready to give up trying to have the daughter that she wanted because, her boys were very active and she was tired. But it was funny because as soon as she said that, I saw pink in front of her, like a pink, I don't know, like a haze, I guess. I don't really know, like a hazy kind of thing. Anyway. Uh-oh, my video camera's going to turn off. So anyway, I blurted it out. I said, "Yeah, you're going to have a girl." And at that time, I didn't know that they had stopped trying to have kids. Excuse me. But yeah, it turned out she got pregnant almost immediately after I told her that, and they had a girl, and then she had her tubes tied after that. So yeah, that was a little weird. So anyway, word kind of got around, and I started to think, oh well, maybe it's the meditating that started this, because I sat and I thought about it, and talked about it with friends and neighbors and that. And that was the only thing that I did that was different, was I had started this regular meditative practice. So I kind of thought, okay, well, there's a connection there. So I started meditating even more. Like every spare moment I had and every bit of quiet time I was meditating. And, you know, I started to have other kinds of dreams and feelings, like it wasn't all negative or people dying. Like, for instance, I had one dream of a young friend, like a young worker at work, I guess. Made no sense, but anyway, a young cashier, and she was still a teenager at the time. I had a dream that her grandparents got into an accident with their car, and I woke up before I found out whether they were fine or not, and that kind of scared me, so I didn't say anything to anyone but Marriott in the office. And I told her, yeah, like I don't want to say anything in case something happens, because I didn't want to upset her, like the young girl. And then probably about, I think it was 3 or 4 days later, they did get into an accident. Her grandma was backing out of their yard and hit, I think it was a parked car. I can't remember. Anyway, it was just a minor fender bender. So yeah, that turned out to be not so bad. So I thought, oh, well, that's actually pretty cool. Like I saw something that wasn't horrible. So it wasn't a big deal to me. So I kept meditating. Like I said, I was doing it up to 3 times a day, every day, because I really enjoyed it and I liked, you know, how everyone wants to be psychic, right? Everyone wants that connection to know things that you don't really know, right? So yeah, like I saw that as a doorway. A doorway of sorts, I guess. So I just kept doing it, and more intensely. And then, okay, so the year was 1996. I had been meditating for 2 years now. And 1996 was the year that my husband and I finally got married. We'd been together for 8 years. And we had a 9-year-old daughter at that time. Or not 9, sorry, 7-year-old. And while I was getting ready for the wedding, like, you know, I spent 6 months getting ready for this wedding, I found myself depressed, and ill, you know, like I felt nauseous, and it was getting worse as time went on for probably about 6 months before the wedding, which was at the end of July that year. But I remember feeling hopelessness, you know, I felt dread, you know, it was, I don't know how else to explain it, but it's like I fell into this depression, and I felt nauseous and sick a lot. And I know my best friend who lived next door to me at that time, she and her mom came over, and I distinctly remember sitting in my living room, and she and Christine looked at me and said, "What is wrong with you? You're getting married. Cheer up." You know, and I said, "I don't know what's happening." I said, and then I just kind of blurted out what was in my head before thinking about it. And I said to her, I said, "I feel like you're going to die, either you or someone close to me, like my dad." And of course, she kind of sat back in the chair and kind of, I don't know, she looked at me kind of strange and then just kind of sloughed it off. And her and her mom said, "Oh, don't be silly," you know, and then they started teasing me that, "Oh, you're probably pregnant," ha ha, you know, like I hadn't been pregnant for 8 years and we're finally getting married, kind of weird thing. So, you know, I took a pregnancy test, nothing, but it just kept getting worse and worse, like this feeling of dread hanging over me. And it was really weird because that year, my husband's best friend, who had been with his girlfriend for 4 years, was getting married 4 weeks before we did, like 4 Saturdays before we did. They were getting married at the beginning of July, and we were getting married at the end of July. And so, you know, it's funny because we were going back and forth, and we're supposed to be happy, planning our weddings, kind of coinciding, but not really planning them together because they lived in a different town. But we were excited to go to their wedding. They were excited to come to ours, kind of thing. But I still have this feeling in the pit of my stomach. Like I don't know how to explain it other than it feels like your stomach is in a knot. You know how your stomach, it tightens just before you're about to throw up. And then when you throw up, you got that feeling like the tension's relieved. I felt like this for at least 3 months solid, that I had this knot in my stomach that I couldn't get rid of because I wasn't throwing. I even tried forcing myself to throw up and it never worked. So anyway, the closer we came to the wedding date, the worse it got. Until, like the actual wedding day. Then we got through it and everything was awesome. And, like Andrew and Tammy got married on the 6th. We got married on the 20th. And then we went on a trip to Reno, like a car trip, 10-day car trip. That was our, what do you call it? Oh, sorry. That was our honeymoon. We did this car trip. And back in those days, we didn't have a cell phone. Like, that was 1996. So neither of us had a cell phone at the time. I think my husband might have had one for work, but yeah, we never actually used one. So what we did was we'd call back and check in every couple of days along the route. Like we'd call his mom or my best friend, which our daughter was staying with. And probably, I think it was 2 days before we were due back in Canada. I phoned my best friend's place, and she says, you have to phone your sister. Or no, sorry, not my sister. You have to phone Andrew's brother. And we're just kind of like, why? That's kind of weird. And she didn't know Andrew very well at the time, so she didn't want to tell us over the phone. But she just said, like, she gave us Brock's number. And when we were in Seattle, coming back into Canada, our second last night on our vacation, we phoned and we found out that Andrew's new bride was killed in an accident at work. And it was weird. It was like at that moment, I knew exactly what it was all about. It was her. And I didn't know her very well. I knew Andrew, really well. But it was something so close to us. And I don't know if it was because of our weddings connected like that, I guess. I don't know. But it terrified me, like... That's when I stopped meditating after that, like I completely stopped meditating because that terrified me, like to be sick for 3 months straight and to have these horrible nightmares and just to have that pit in your stomach and not know, I knew someone was going to die, but I didn't know who, and I knew it was close. Which is why I thought it was going to be my dad or my best friend. Like I said, about 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to pursue this again. It was more because I think my father passed away, and now I have both parents in the spirit world. So I wanted to connect with him and to feel him around because I had shut myself off completely after Tammy passed away because it just terrified me. Like I said, I had, like at that time, I started taking sleeping meds so that I wouldn't dream. I never touched meditation again because I knew there was a connection between it and what was happening. And I just didn't want it to happen again. So, yeah, I've been taking sleeping meds for damn near 15 years and then finally stopped because I decided, I wanted to try and stay more connected with the spirit world. The spirits have always come around. Like I've always been able to hear them. Mostly here. Like I'm mostly an auditory person, I suppose you could say. I don't know if that's the right term, but I hear them. I can hear them whispering. I can, as I'm falling asleep at night, you know how you can tune in to that current, kind of like radio waves, I suppose. And I could hear, like, you know, just constant chatter in my mind with different voices, and none of it makes sense to me. Not that it doesn't make sense, it's logical thought processes. Excuse me. But yeah, so yeah, 2 years ago I decided I wanted to get back into this, but doing it very slowly. And of course now, you know, like I've learned how to turn things off, how to stop things like that from happening. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that because, you know, like people talk about wanting to be psychic and wanting these things so badly. But there's not always a good side to it. So I just thought I would share my experience. It wasn't a good experience, I'll tell you that. It's not good when you have the funeral of a young girl in the same church that she was married 4 Saturdays before. That's pretty freaking sad. But anyway, yeah. So I thought I would share that, all my rambling. But now my bath is cold, so I think I'm going to go. I'll talk to you later.